Right, what's up you guys? So the first thing we need to do is set up our virtual development environment. Now we're going to settle on VMware Workstation Pro. Yes, it's a paid offering, and I understand many people use VirtualBox instead. I have nothing against VirtualBox. The only issue I find is that because it's open source, it tends to have problems that closed source, that is commercial software such as VMware Workstation Pro, does not have. In addition, VMware Workstation Pro is free as a trial. And since it's a more mature, robust product, that's what we'll be using in this course. So if you want to use VirtualBox, that's okay, but we're going to use VMware Workstation Pro because it is the gold standard of virtualization. For anyone who's truly serious about offensive tool development in Python, you should be using VMware Workstation Pro, okay? So you're going to go to the VMware website, and you're going to find the application. Now, the site may change with time. The idea is you want to go to Workspace and then try to find Workstation Pro on the main page. This is where it's located as of today. All right, so it says buy online. Don't worry, we don't need to worry about that right now. Instead, you can look at some of the features and some of the use cases. And what we're going to want to do is actually download the trial. So here you see it says try Workstation Pro. So that's what we'll do, download the trial. And then the download will begin as soon as we click Workstation 16 Pro for Windows. Again, this version may change depending on when you look at this video. You just want to grab the latest version, whatever that happens to be. Great. So we will download this application. And then once it's done, we'll double click and install and go through the setup process. All right. So I'll see you guys in the next lecture. Bye. All right, so now we've got the setup wizard here, and it's pretty much a next finished installation. So I'll click next, accept the license agreement. Hopefully I didn't sign away my firstborn son. And you want to install the enhanced keyboard driver. This will just make it easier to type in your VMs. And I like to add VMware Workstation to the system path. It just makes it easier to launch the application from your host machine. The host is your physical machine that is hosting, that contains the virtual machine guests, which in our case will be Kali Linux. That will be our virtual machine guest. All right, I'm going to opt out of the customer improvement program, and I'll check for updates on startup. Shortcuts make things easy, so we'll keep that there. And since I've already got it installed, my version is going to say upgrade, but yours is probably just going to say install. But in either case, you'll click the button here to either upgrade or install. All right, so it took about 7 minutes to get here. For me, I did an upgrade, so it took a little longer. But for you, it'll probably finish faster if you're just doing a straight install because it doesn't have to remove the existing components like an upgrade does. All right, so we're here. We can click finish, and then we'll restart the system. And when we come back, I'll show you VMware Workstation Pro, the interface, and then we will get Kali Linux going. All right, so I'll see you guys in the next lecture. Peace. All right, you guys, so we've got VMware Workstation installed. When you open it up, you'll see this beautiful screen. And what we're going to do is create our virtual machine. So this is my physical box. It's called my host. And this is the hypervisor, which will then host, I'm using the word in a different way, a virtual machine guest. And our guest VM is going to be none other than the premier penetration testing framework known as Kali Linux. All right, so I don't know if you've heard of this distro. If you haven't, you're going to love it because it is awesome. It is the de facto pen testing, security, research, and reverse engineering distribution of Linux. So we're going to download this, and the easiest way to do this is to actually download the virtual machine. So many people don't know this. Sometimes people will go ahead and download the ISO. We're going to download the virtual machine because it's already set up. It's a pre-built image. So it's quick, rapid deployment, and it will get us going in the right direction fast. So I'm going to click virtual machines, And then I'm going to scroll down, and you can see there is a VirtualBox machine as well, but we're going to get VMware Workstation. So I'm just going to click download, and you can see it is approximately 2.3 gigs, so it's going to take some time. But once it finishes, as you probably already guessed, we're going to unzip this file. It ends in .7z, so it is a 7-zip archive. So we'll use 7-zip to unarchive it, and then we'll double-click the .vmx file and import it into VMware Workstation. All right, guys? So I'll see you in a little bit when this finishes. All right, so we're all done, but before we can open it, we need 7-zip. So if I click into the location bar and type 7-zip, you can see we can head on over to 7-zip, and then we can just download the 64-bit executable. And then once we have 7-zip downloaded, which it went really, really fast because it's a small file, we can just open it and install it. And that's it. It's installed. All right, so now all we need to do is click on our archive, which is in our downloads folder, right click, and we will say 7-zip extract to, and we'll extract it to this folder. So this is going to take some time. As you can imagine, this is a large file. So we'll let this extract, and then we will come back once it's done. All right, so you can see that it took about 1 minute, 17 seconds to finish. So what we'll do is in the next lecture, we will import and then configure Kali Linux. Okay, guys, so I'll see you in the next lecture when we configure our Kali Linux distribution. All right, so now we've got Kali Linux extracted, but we need to import and configure. So what we'll do is jump to the extracted location. We dropped it in this folder here. I'm just going to double click into it, find the .vmx file, which is a virtual machine configuration file, and we will just double click it. VMware Workstation Pro will open, and then we'll have configuration options. So I'm going to close the Home tab and just do a few things. First, we want to give it more than 2 gigabytes of RAM. Now, my host machine has 32 gigabytes of RAM. You don't need 32 gigabytes. If you have it, great. If you have 16, awesome. But we're just going to configure it for 4 gigs. That's all you need. And then we'll change the adapter from NAT to bridged. And then we'll just click OK. Or hit enter. Either one works. All right, so that looks good. If you scroll down to the bottom part over here with the description, it tells you a little bit of information here. You can see the username is Kali and the password is Kali. So the first thing we're going to do is rename this into something more sensible. So I'll click the library view. Let's rename this Kali 2022.1. And I'll create a new folder and call it Python pen testing. And drag my VM inside just to make things neat. And then we'll power it on. And I'll say I copied it. And we'll let it rip. All right, so let me position this window a little better. We're going to log in with username Kali and password Kali. And the first thing we're going to want to do is pimp our Kali Linux. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that in the next lecture. So hold on tight. We're going for a ride. See you guys in a little bit. All right, so in the last lecture, we imported Kali, and now we're going to pimp it out. So I'm going to tell you what I mean in a moment. We're just going to open up our browser. I just clicked Firefox in the upper left corner. And once it opens, we're going to get this awesome script. It's the script I always run before I do anything in a fresh Kali install. So I'll say pimp my Kali GitHub. And it's the DeWalt-Arch repo. This script is the bomb. All right, so I'm just going to click code, click the copy icon there, then I'll minimize the window, open up a terminal, and in here, I'm just going to make sure I'm in the right directory. You can see I'm currently in the Kali directory, which is my home directory. and I'll just say sudo git clone Control-Shift-V to paste in the GitHub repo. I'll type in my password, Callie. It's going to clone the repo, which is just a fancy term for downloading it. Then I will cd into that directory, and I just want to make sure the script is executable, which it is. That's what the X bit means for each of these. For the users and groups and owners, we can execute this script. So I'm going to type sudo ./pimpmycallie. And the first thing I'm going to do is run it as a new user for a fresh install for a new VM setup. So I'm going to maximize the screen, and I'm just going to hit in. Let me show you everything. I'll scroll up a little bit. We're just running a new VM setup right here. And then after that finishes, we'll install the Sublime text editor with L, Go Witness precompiled with W, and then VSCode with V. And then your Callie will be pimped. And it's awesome. It just makes it so good. This fixes a lot of the problems that people have with Callie the first time they install it. There's just little issues that are just really, really annoying. And the script takes care of all that. All right. So let's hit in. It's going to take a while. So you can't just click and forget. You need to stand by and monitor. Occasionally you'll have to interact with the script. So pay attention to what's happening. Think about what's happening and just follow along, and we'll do this together. All right. I'll see you in a little bit. And once this script finishes and we run the rest of the components for VS Code and Sublime Text, we'll set the DPI settings to high so that's easier to see. And we'll also change the sleep settings. Actually, let's do that now while we're waiting. So I'm going to click the Kali Linux icon in the top. I'm going to go to Power Manager. In here, I'm going to go to System. And let's see, what do we want to do here? We want to disable the sleep. So for the display, we'll just turn off everything. We don't want it to ever go to sleep. We want our VM to stay active. And we'll do the same for the plugged in settings. Turn off sleep all the way. Security, don't automatically lock the sessions. I'll say never. Lock the screen when the system is going to sleep. Uncheck that. I think that'll take care of the sleep settings there. All right, so that looks good. Then we can go up here and we can say high DPI, or I think it's just DPI. Yeah, Kali high DPI mode. So we'll set the scaling right. So now we are in high DPI mode, and it may look the same to you, but once the script finishes and we close it and we reopen it, the windows will look a lot easier to read. You can already see the icons here are a little bigger. It just makes everything a little, easier to use. A little easier on the eyes, right? So I'm going to press Alt-Tab to go back to the script, and we'll just wait for this to finish or get to a point where we need to interact with it. And the other thing before I forget is once this is done, obviously we're going to want to create a snapshot. So if I press Control Alt, I can escape the VM, and then I can go up here and I can say VM snapshot and take a snapshot. So we'll also do that when this is done. Just trying to give you guys a heads up on where we're going, right? I like to navigate in a way that you know what to expect. I don't want to surprise you with anything here. So just keep being patient, and we'll wait for this progress bar to keep marching forward, and we'll come back in a little bit. All right, so we're at our first stopping point, and you see a lot of red. So whenever you see red and it says read carefully, you really should. So what it's basically asking is, do you want to be able to log in as root? Because by default, Kali logs you in with the Kali user, which has limited permissions. But I like to change it to root because it just gives me more control. And since this is a development environment, this isn't a production system, this is perfectly legitimate. So I'm going to hit Y to install Kali root login so we can log in as root. And then it's going to ask us if we want to copy the files from the Kali home directory to the Kali root folder, and we'll say yes. But first we need to create our root password. So I'm just going to set it to Kali. I'm keeping everything simple here. And then, like I said before, it's asking us, do we want to copy the folders? Since we don't have anything to overwrite, this is perfectly fine, right? This is a new system. So you could say yes or no, it doesn't matter. There should be no discernible difference between any option. But I'm just going to say copy everything from home Kali to root. And it's saying, are you sure? Yes. That's because if you have stuff in root, you could nuke that folder. But since, again, this is a new install, we don't have to worry about that. I think that's the last prompt that it will require. And I think after this, it'll just finish till the end, unless the script is changed, which it can. It can change. This script is well maintained. But, we'll let this finish. And then we'll come back and we'll save our snapshot. Oh yeah. All done. Happy hacking. That's what you want to see. It took me a while to get here. It took about an hour, maybe 90 minutes. But once you get here, we're going to rerun the PIMPED script. But this time, we're not going to press new VM setup. We're actually going to install Sublime Editor and then VSCode. So we'll press L for Sublime. I just think it's one of the best text editors out there. We already have Atom that came with the PIMPED script, but Sublime is also pretty nice. And this goes by a lot faster. And then we'll just press V for install MS Code. All right, we'll rerun PIMPED, and then we'll just put V. Installing VSCode. All right, so we're good to go. Let's close the terminal, reopen it. That looks good. And then let's make sure we have VSCode. We do. Okay, great. So what we'll do in the next lecture is we will set up TMUX. And then we'll install VSCode and everything will be well. So let's go ahead and create the snapshot. And I will see you guys in the next lecture. All right, so now we're going to set up TMUX. I'm going to include this configuration script inside the resource section, but essentially TMUX makes it fun to play in the terminal. You can split panes, you can copy and paste, and do a bunch of really cool things. You will quickly become proficient with TMUX as we go through this course. All right, so what I'm going to do first is check my directory. I'm in the home Kali directory, and I am the Kali user, right? So what I can do is I can say sudo vim, and then in the home directory, that's what the tilde means, create a file called .tmux.conf. The dot means it'll be hidden, but you'll see what I mean in a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit I to go into insert mode, and I'm just going to paste in this script. Again, I'm going to include this script inside of the resource section. I just pressed Control-Shift-V to paste it in, escape, Shift-ZZ to save, and then we're just going to make sure this script is here. And you can see it is. If we did ls minus lahr, just grep for TMUX, you'll see it right there. So what we want to do is create a new TMUX session. So TMUX new s Python pen test. Let's just name it that for now. All right, you can see our taskbar is blue. That means that our configuration is set up correctly. Control AI is a way to commit the configuration, and then we can do sudo git clone Control-Shift-V. This is just the TMUX logging plugin so that as we are typing commands, it'll be logged. And we can go back through our logging history and recall what we did earlier. So it's really helpful to have this set up. Now that we've got that set up, we can say TMUX source file, and we're just going to put in our configuration file. I just tab completed it in order to make it finish that way. So I did the tilde/.tmux, and then I hit tab and it completed the file. And that's because I can't type. Typing and talking, it's a skill when you do both simultaneously. All right, so we want to type source file, press enter, that looks good. And then Control-A, Shift-P, and you see it started logging, right? So that's one of the ways that you can log, Control-A, Shift-P, and our commands will be logged here. So that is pretty cool, guys. TMUX is now set up. And really the last thing that we need to do, let's go ahead and exit this, is to jump into VSCode and to set that up. Now, one nice thing about TMUX is that it will actually persist across sessions. So if I close out of the terminal and I reopen it, I can just get back into my TMUX session. And we'll get into that in a moment. You'll see all that goodness when we play with TMUX. But what we're going to do in the next lecture is we're going to set up Visual Studio Code for Python, right? And this is going to be our development environment. Some people use PyCharm. Others just use the raw Python interpreter, which is really just going into the terminal and typing Python, right? Well, if I knew how to spell Python. That is one option, but we're not going to take that approach because it is a lot easier. You can even do Python 3. It is a lot easier to just use an IDE like Visual Studio Code. This is one of the best. All right, guys. So I will see you in the next lecture when we are going to set up this interface and configure it for Python. All right. See you in a little bit. Peace. All right, you guys, so now we've got Visual Studio Code. We can get there just by clicking start and then typing code. That's one way. The other way is to open the terminal, click this little black box here and just type code, right? If we type code this way, it will start code OSS, which is code. So I like to launch it the traditional way, which is just to click the Kali icon, type code, and then open it up. So the first thing we're going to want to do is customize our interface, right? I mean, this is kind of cool, but it's not as cool as it can be. We're all about customization, right? You can't program without your color themes. All right. So you could click color theme and you could try, these different options here. Some of them are pretty cool, but we're going to install the standard. I think is the industry standard. It should be the industry standard. If we go to extensions down here, and then we type material. First of all, you can see we have 0 installed. That's why the 0 is here. And there are a couple popular ones, but we just want to type material theme. Good. So we're going to get the material theme and then the icon theme pack. So if we click material theme, you'll see this theme has a ton of different downloads and it's really cool. For Linux, you can see we can press Control P to open up the quick open for the theme. And really the best thing to do is just to get started, right? So let's just do install. Very nice. All right, so we'll click the X on this little pop-up. There's a couple different themes here. We can select the theme. We can go high contrast. We can go darker. I mean, look how awesome this looks. Pale Night is actually my favorite, Pale Night high contrast. But look at these themes. Doesn't it look really, really nice? Oh, this looks really good. I'm kind of digging that. Ocean high contrast. Let's use this one. I was going to go Pale Night. That's what I usually do, but Ocean high contrast looks really nice. So we'll grab that theme. And then we will install the material icon theme. So the nice thing about this is when you're coding, it will present the correct icon for whatever application you're coding in. And it just makes it more fun. Right? You don't have to do this. This is just something I love to do. It just makes coding more fun. And that's what we want to do, right? Let's see. Python should be in here. Python. Ah, there you are. All right. So we're going to install the material icon theme. So now it is installing. And then it tells us how we can change our colors. So material icon theme, we click that. And we can just click activate. All right, so now it is activated. So let's see, I'm going to click open folder. I'm going to go to, let's just say documents. Okay. And we'll just say new file. So we'll say select the language. We'll click that and we'll just type Python. And you can see the icon looks really good. Everything's up to date the way we want it to be. And then we can start working out of this folder. Right, we can create a folder here. Inside of this, we can say Python pen testing. And then inside of there, we can create a file, hello.py. And bam, look at that. The icons are all there. Man, it looks good. You guys, I know you guys are so ready to code. There's just one more thing we need to do, and that is we need to install the Python extension. So we will do that in the next lecture, all right? I'll see you guys in a little bit. Peace. All right, so we've got our theme and our icon set up. Let's go ahead and install the Python extension. It's kind of hard to code in Python without Python. So I'm just going to type Python in the extensions, and we just want Python. It should be the one that has like a ton of downloads. It's just called Python, and it includes a bunch of really cool stuff, including a Jupyter notebook, which if you don't know what Jupyter notebooks that's fine. We talk about that in my Python course, but it's really cool. It's just a great way that you can add metadata and context to your code so that it's human readable, and it just makes it more beautiful. So we'll click install, and we'll let this do its thing. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to select our Python interpreter by clicking the status bar once we get this thing going. So we'll just give it a moment. I'm just a little too eager. And this looks really nice. I like the syntax highlighting. Man, it's going to be sweet. You guys are in for a treat. All right, see you in a little bit. All right, we are good to go. We are good to go. So I'm going to close that out. And now we can get started. We can create a new Python file. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to go ahead and click create a new Python file. And you can see the syntax is already there. So this is going to be a lot of fun, guys. I cannot wait to get started with you guys. You can see if I mouse over the name print, it gives me some context help. So it helps me to understand, how I can actually use this keyword and what it does. So we are about to rock and roll. I will see you in the next lecture when we start building our offensive toolkit. All right, guys, I'll see you in a little bit. Peace. All right, you guys, now it's the moment you've been waiting for. We hack. All right, so before we do that, I just want to map everything we do to MITRE ATT&CK as much as possible. So when we get into email collection, because that's what this lecture series is going to be about, this segment we're going to build an email scraper. And email collection actually maps to a specific MITRE ATT&CK ID, attack technique ID T1114 collection, and specifically email collection. Okay, so if you want to look at all the MITRE ATT&CK technique IDs, or at least most of them, you can head on over into MITRE ATT&CK's website, which I strongly encourage you to do. Right, so you can just go to attack.mitre.org. And if you scroll down, you'll see a list of all the attacker tactics and techniques. Tactics are the what, meaning what the attackers are trying to accomplish, and the technique is how they do it. And then if you click into a given technique, it'll even give you the procedures. That is the command by command procedures. That's really the best way I could put it for executing those particular attacks, mapped to threat groups. So you can see which threat groups are using these tactics. You can also scroll down and you can see what mitigations you can put in place, how you can detect these particular tactics. There's a lot here. You could probably spend a week just on this website and looking at everything they have here. But what we're going to do is we're going to build this email scraper. So the first step in launching our attack will be recon, right? So we'll start with recon. And every red team or threat group will seek to colonize victim networks by either one of two ways. Well, there's a couple different ways, but usually you'll see either whaling, where you try to attack the victim network by going after the big fish, right? The VIPs, the executives, or spearfishing. This is where you send a pretext that's specific to non-executive victims. And the whole goal here is, the red team operator or penetration tester, or even the determined human adversary, they're all trying to gain code execution on the target. And one way to do this, or at least to begin, is to scrape emails, right? Because if you scrape those emails, especially if you scrape them from the victim website, this is a passive activity. It's very difficult to block. A lot of times you won't even recognize that it's happening. You, meaning the organization or the blue team. So as a red team operator, We can provide immense value to our organizations by showing that we can build this tooling. We have a list of emails, and then we can craft a spear phishing campaign, against these emails, right? Got all these emails here. And we can craft this campaign, and then eventually somebody's going to click the link. Say it's this guy down here. And this will give us initial access into the environment. And that's really the part that this lecture will focus on. Not the initial access part, but building the tooling to scrape the victim emails and getting access that way. Now, obviously, I've got to warn you, okay? Let me erase everything here. Only do this, okay? Only do this with the explicit written consent of an individual in the target organization who is authorized to grant that consent. Authorized. Otherwise, you've crossed from being a good guy to a bad guy. And I have zero tolerance for bad guys. All right, we're trying to improve the security posture of the organizations we support. We're not trying to wreck them. All right, so if that's you, you should request a refund for this course right away, because I don't want you here. And if you're the kind of person who wants to deliver value to the organizations you protect by improving their security posture, by creating offensive tooling in Python, then you're the kind of person I want to work with. Okay, so just had to get that off the table. So now that we've got some concepts taken care of, in the next lecture, we're going to go into actually building our Python email scraper, right? In VS Code. I'll see you guys a little bit. Peace. All right, so now let's jump into the coding. All right, guys. So the first thing we're going to do is obviously open up VS Code. So I'm going to click the little start button up here. I'm going to type code. And before I click it, I'm going to right click and choose add to panel. That's going to add it to the upper right corner here so that we have it for easy access. Now I can click this and open it up. All right, so we need to create our file. If I click Python pen testing, you can see we've got this folder here located in Documents Python pen testing. I can click the new file icon, and we're just going to name this email collection.py. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, now the first thing that's going to happen is going to say that the linter pylint is not installed. Now what is this? So VS Code wants you to install this, and you definitely want to, because this will make VS Code better. What it does is it will cause the IDE, the Integrated Development Environment, to passively sniff for programming errors as you code. So you can quickly catch syntax errors and other issues before they become problematic. All right, so we'll just click install. See, a terminal opens up and you'll see the commands being run to install the linter. Should just take a few seconds. Okay, so it's done. We can click the X, or we can press Control backtick. Backtick is usually under the escape key, shares a key with a tilde character. All right, so now that we've got that installed, let's import some libraries, okay? Because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Python uses libraries, right? A library is just a reusable chunk of code, and it's known as a module. You can even have packages which are collections of modules. And the whole idea is you can call on these to help you accomplish your coding objectives. So what do we need? What do we want to do? Well, the first thing we need to do is build some network requests, right? So if I say import requests, I can actually import the request library, or module, I guess is a better term for it. And if I hover over it, you can see that this is a module called requests. It's part of the requests HTTP library, and it's a library written in Python for human beings, not for computers. All right, so we're going to want to get that. We're also going to want to get the exceptions request library, import requests. And if I hit the dot, you can see it auto completes, and you can see that there's actual piece inside this package called exceptions. That's what we want. And if I mouse over again, you can see this module contains the exceptions. It's a way that we can handle HTTP errors. And if you want to get even deeper and look at what this does, click on the little terminal up here, and then go into Python 3 and just type import requests. And then you can type help and put in the module that you just imported, and it'll show you what we saw with our mouse over. But even better, I hit Q to exit that. If you do dir requests, you can inspect this module and see the different functions and classes and everything that's inside of there. You can even see there's an exceptions piece right there, right? Let's exit. All right, so we've got our HTTP requests and our exceptions. What do we need next? Well, we need to use some kind of container data type. So there's a module called dequeue, which can easily add and remove items from containers on the fly, because we're going to have a collection of data and we want an easy way to manipulate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say from collections, that's the package, and I'm going to import a module. I just hit the D and it tab completed dequeue. And again, if I just mouse over it, you can see this is a list-like sequence optimized for data accesses near its endpoint. It's just a way that you can pop in and push and just send data out and onto and out of different data types. So if you ever want to get deeper and learn more about this stuff, if you go to, let's see, Chrome. All right, don't send any data to Google. They've got all your data. They've got all my data. Google already knows everything. So I'm going to type Python dequeue. And I want to go to the docs that are on Python's official website. You can see it's in the collections module. And here, dequeue, if I click that, you can get a really good understanding of what this does. We're actually going to be using a couple of these methods in here, like these pop methods and a few other things, but we'll get to that when we get there. And by the way, I should change this to match what we're using in VS Studio. See, this says 3.10.4. We're actually at 3.9. How did I know that? Because if I go back to VS Studio code, you can see it says it down here. All right, so now we need another module called URL lib. And this is actually a Python package that contains several modules. But the one we're going to use is the .parse module inside the URL lib package, because it'll help us to, any guesses? It'll help us to parse URLs, right? How to break them down. So you'll see why we need to do that. As you can imagine, we're scraping emails off of websites. So we're definitely going to parse. Parse is just a fancy term for, I guess you could say, scraping. So I'll say import URL lib. And if I hit the dot, you can see I get a couple of options, and parse is what we want. And again, I can just mouse over it and I get some information here. Parse absolute and relative URL. So this is going to be really, really fun. Now, what else do we need? Well, we need to use regular expressions, and also known as ASCII-Puke. This is just a way for extracting data, right? There's a universal format. It's kind of complicated, a little bit esoteric, but don't worry, I'll help you understand it. But it's a way that we can extract text, any text really, almost anywhere, any way we want. So obviously with that kind of power, there's complexity, but with the RE module, we can simplify things a little bit. So we're going to say import RE. That is not for reverse engineer. It's for regular expressions. And this is how we can match on different characters. All right, so it's going to be really fun when we start playing with that. And then finally, we are going to import the Beautiful Soup module from the BS4 package. That is the Beautiful Soup version 4 package. So we can say from BS4 import Beautiful. That is tab complete. And there we go. We've got Beautiful Soup. And what does Beautiful Soup do? I almost said, what does Beautiful Soup does? I sound like my 3-year-old son. Beautiful Soup, what it does is it's exactly what it says here, right? It's a data structure representing a parsed HTML or XML document. So it's a way that we can parse the HTML, get that stuff out. And as you can imagine, this is perfect for our email parser. All right, guys. So that's all we're going to do in this lecture. We're going to keep things really simple. I'm going to add multiple cursors by holding down Alt, clicking. And then I'm just going to hit delete to remove that space and escape. Control S to save. And we'll pick this up in the next lecture when we start coding. See you in a little bit. And don't forget to leave a review, a positive review if you've learned something new. That's my motto. If you've learned anything new, even in the least, consider giving a 5-star review so we can get more people in this course and they can join you and share the awesome, all right? Thank you guys. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Peace. Great. So now that we have our modules imported, the next step, and you probably already guessed this, is user input capture, right? We need a way to read in the URL the user desires to scrape for emails. So what we'll do is we will just use the input function. You can see this is a prompt, read a string from standard input. That's exactly what we want to do. I just pressed Control K, Control T really quick because I just want to change the theme to something different. All right, so there we go. We've got our input function. And what we'll do is we'll put in a string and we'll ask the user to enter a target URL. And I'll put a space at the end. So when they enter it, it's not smashed up against this colon. And what we'll do is we'll just save this in a variable called original URL. And we could actually just run a quick print on this to see what it looks like after we run it. So I'm going to hit the play button. And if I just type securitypluspro.com, you can see it just prints it out. Nothing too great there, right? But we're making progress. So one thing we want to do is we want to make sure that whatever the user enters is a string. So if they put a bunch of numbers, we don't want it to be interpreted like digits. We want it to be interpreted as a string. So we could wrap this entire thing in a string method. So we're basically passing the user's input into the string method to force the data type to be a string. And let's see, let's go ahead and print out this type. Type will show us the data type. Control-Shift-C, Control-Shift-V, and you can see it is indeed a string, so that's good. Control backtick to close that bottom pane, and let's take out this print, and let's continue. So we're actually going to look at some debugging too. Right now I'm just using the print statement, but we're going to use Wireshark. We're going to debug this thing. I'm going to show you guys really how to code correctly in Python, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Taking it one step at a time. Now, the next thing we need to do is create a collection of websites to crawl, right? We want a bunch of URLs. Essentially, what this is going to do is it's going to spider. We're going to put one URL in, right? Let me draw this out for you guys. All right, so the user will put in a URL, and then the application will go, this is a horrible arrow, but you get the idea, right? The application will go to the document. It'll scrape all the HTML source, and then it will look for all the links. And then of those links, it'll extract the links that actually have emails. And it'll just keep extracting all the links and emails from the document until it's done. Then it'll actually follow any links on the page. Let's say this red one right here, that's a link. It'll go to that web page and repeat the process of finding any links from this page. So this might be page A, this might be page B. And then, there might be a couple links here, and it'll do the same thing, right? So it's basically a spider and a scraper and an email collector, really is what it's doing. So we'll inspect this. You'll see how it works as we build it, and hopefully everything will start to make sense. I'm going to try to explain everything I'm doing as I'm doing it. So what we want to do here is we need to create a collection of websites to crawl. We need a place to store the websites that we're going to crawl. And our scraper is going to scrape not just all the URLs that it finds, right? We don't want to spider forever. So we're going to set sort of a depth count or a scrape level so that it only scrapes up to a certain amount of URLs and then it stops or exits the loop. But one of the ways to track all these URLs is in a deck object. Okay, it looks like the word DQ, but it's actually pronounced DEC. How do I know that? Because in the documentation, it is pronounced, it actually says it's pronounced DEC. I know it doesn't say that here, but if you go to the Python documentation, it says that. And think of it kind of like a deck of cards. It's like an optimized list. And it's perfect for our use case right here. So let's go ahead and create our queue of unscraped URLs that we want to be crawled. So this will be a unique list of data type DEC. Okay, so I'm going to say DEC. And then in here, you can see it says a list-like sequence. It is kind of like a list, but it's not really a list. But this is coming from our collections module. So in here, I will put in the original URL. And we'll save it in a variable called unscraped URLs, right? So then we can put our unscraped URLs inside of this DEC collection. This is going to be a collection. So right now we only have one URL, but this will build out. Now, the other thing we want is we want all the unique emails that we've captured, right? Unique. The keyword is unique. So we can use the set data type, right? A set doesn't really say here. I guess it does. Yeah, it does. Build an unordered collection of unique elements. So that's what we want to do. We want a collection of elements, but we want them to be unique. That's the key. So we're going to create this variable so we can store really all of the processed unscraped URLs somewhere so we don't end up scraping it twice. So what we can do is we can say, all right, we want a set object and we want it to be called scraped URLs. That's the set. That word scraped looks weird, but I think that's how you spell it. And we also want to track the unique email addresses, right? So we can say emails are also of type set. So now we've got our unique emails, our unique scraped URLs. We've got our unscraped URLs, which is a collection, really a DEC. Let me just show you guys what I'm talking about when I say DEC, because it may not be clear. So here's the documentation, and you can see it is pronounced DEC. It's short for double-ended queue. And it's memory efficient. It's really good when you want to, pop something off the front of a list. And that's actually what we're going to do. We're going to remove and return an element from the left side of the list. That is the first URL from the list. And then we're going to pop those off as we go, okay? So you'll see it all makes sense as we continue to code. In the next lecture, we're going to jump into the scraping process itself. So this is kind of all the setup. And now we will scrape. All right, guys. So I'll see you in the next one. Peace. All right, guys. So now we're going to start the scraping process. And the thing we need to do is distinguish between scraped URLs and unscraped URLs. So we can do this by moving the scraped URLs, right after it's been scraped, from the unscraped URLs to the scraped URLs, right? So we're just moving a URL, it wasn't scraped. Once we scrape it, we move to scraped URLs. That's how we're tracking and distinguishing between the two. And we want to keep going through all these URLs. So whenever you hear the word keep, you should think loop, right? Because we want to do it over and over until we run out of URLs. That's when we stop. So we're scraping, we're yanking the URL out of the queue, and then we're putting it into a list of scraped URLs so we don't forget about it. All right, so we're just going to create a counter just to keep track of what's going on. And we're going to set up a try block. This just means try this, and if it fails, then do this. We're going to set this try except block up. And really, we want it to end if the user interrupts, sends a keyboard interrupt command, like a control Z or something like that. So I'm going to say, except if we have a keyboard interrupt, oops, no space between there, keyboard interrupt, tab complete. If the user sends the keyboard interrupt command, we're just going to print out nice little text that says exiting. Now what we need to do is the actual scraping, all right? So let's go ahead and kick this off. We'll start off with a while loop and we'll say, all right, while we have something in unscraped URLs, we're going to iterate the count by 1, right? Plus equals 1. And then what we'll do is we'll say, all right, if the count is, let's say, actually, I guess we can call this depth. That's really what it is. Depth. If the depth is equal to 20 URLs, then we just want to break out of this entire loop, right? Now that we have that edge case in place, what we want to do is we want to move the next URL from the queue to the set of processed URLs. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, unscraped URLs, tab complete that. And we're going to pop the first one out and save it in a variable called URL. All right, so that's what we're doing. We're moving that URL out of the queue into a variable called URL, and then we're putting it into the scraped URLs like this. Scraped URLs, how do we add it? Well, you can see there's an add method, right? So we're just going to add that URL that we just popped out of unscraped URLs. Make sense so far? Okay, so now that we've got that part done, we need to capture, or I guess extract different data from different parts of the URL. So that's why we actually included this URL parse module, because this will allow us to sort of break down the URL into its various components and extract exactly what we need. So we just need the base URL and we need a path so that we can make a relative URL. Like let's say the URL is about like this, right? That's a relative URL. The path is relative to whatever the parent domain is. But if you type this into a browser, it's going to fail. So we need to extract this and then build a resolvable URL from the URL we extracted from the source code. Okay. I know it sounds kind of crazy. Don't worry, it's going to make sense as we do this. So we can use URL split. This is going to return what's known as a 5 tuple. It's just 5 bits of information. We have the addressing scheme, which is HTTP or HTTPS. We'll have the network location, like security+pro.com. We'll have the path, which would be something like about, right? And then we will also have a query. That would be a query, right? Anything after that query string. That's a parameter name and value. That's a query if we had that. And also a fragment. A fragment is sort of like a relative anchor on the web page that tells you where to go within the particular page, the top or bottom. Sometimes you see these in web pages where you click a link. If you're at the bottom and you click a link that looks like a little arrow, it'll take you up to the top without you having to scroll all the way up to the top. All right, so we can build this out. And we can save this in a variable, all these parts. Let's just save it in a variable called parts. And we will use URL split. And we'll just pass in the URL. All right, now we need to get the base URL. So let's grab that. We're going to use the format method on parts to extract. We're basically going to extract the base URL from what is in the parts variable. And so let's go ahead and grab a few things. We know that the scheme is going to be before the colon, right? HTTP : HTTP : or HTTPS : right? That's the scheme. We'll grab that part. And then the actual domain, I guess you could say the domain name, like security+pro.com or something like that, comes after the .. And this is called the netlock. All right. So now that we've got that there, what we can do is we can do some conditional logic here, because if the path, right, if the path starts with a /, we want to grab the part after the path and save that in the path variable. Otherwise, we'll just take whatever is in the URL and save it in path. Okay. So if we say if this / is in parts, right here, parts. This is a URL split object, so the .path piece of that. Then we'll go ahead and say the path is equal to, this is the deck object. So we'll say, all right, we just want to get the URL rfind, go ahead and find that / and then add 1 to it to get the part after it. Else, we'll just save the URL into the path variable. And then what we want to do is just print out to the user that we're doing something, right? Because we don't want them to be completely blinded on all this processing that we're doing. So we can say scraping. And what we want to do is we want to include the depth and the URL. This is a format string here. We can say, all right, for the depth, we're going to print out that value, which will be a number, a decimal. So we can say %d for that. And then the URL is a string. So we can just say scraping %s for string. There we go. All right, so that looks good to me. What we'll do in the next lecture is, I don't want to jam too much in one lecture here, is we will actually get the contents of the URL, send the GET request, and then start searching through that response data, okay? So I'll see you guys in the next lecture. Peace. All right, here we go. So let's continue coding. We're going to grab the contents of the URL. This is going to send the actual GET request. So we can say requests. That's from the requests module. And what we want to do is run GET. And we want to pass in the URL, right? And we'll save this response because this will actually return the source code, the HTML source of the web page that we're trying to scrape. So we'll save that in a response variable. Just call it the name response, right? Just something I'm making up here. And now that I think about it, technically we want to put this in a try block because if this fails, we want something to happen. So I'm going to say try, put this here. And then I'll say, if it fails for some reason, if there's an exception, specifically, this is why we included the requests.exception module. The requests.exceptions, because now we can process these exceptions, right? We can say if there's some error message, meaning some error condition like requests.exceptions, like if the schema is missing, for example, they forgot to put the HTTP or the HTTPS, or there's a connection error. You can actually see a list of all the different exceptions here, right? You could say timeout, it's proxy error, SSL error. There's so many different things you can put here. So you can handle all these error cases. But I'm just going to say if there's a connection error, then, well, I don't want the scraping to stop. I just want it to just kind of ignore that and to keep going. So I'll say continue. All right. And there we go. All right. So what we'll do in the next lecture, this one's really short. In the next one, we're going to actually extract the email, right? That's why you guys came here. So all this was kind of set up for that. We'll go ahead and capture the emails in the next lecture. All right. See you in a little bit. Peace. All right, so now we've got the web application source in the response variable right here. And so, we've got the source, right? So we can search through the source for all email addresses and add it to our set. And this is why we needed, let me scroll up here. This is why we needed the regular expression module here. Support for regular expressions, because we're going to need a regular expression, which is just a fancy term for search match criteria, to find the emails inside of our response. And we only want unique emails. So let's go ahead and capture this inside of an email variable called new emails. New emails. And what we'll do is we'll create a new set because we only want uniques. And we can call the find all method from the regular expression module. So re.findAll. And usually start it, the way you start this is with a little r. So you put an R here, and then we're going to put our regular expression in quotes. What is the actual regex for finding an email? Well, you could Google around, and that's actually what we're going to do, because emails are really complicated. Regex, email, Stack Overflow. Usually they have some good stuff here. Accept all cookies. I mean, you could try to work on this yourself, but there are really smart people out here that have come up with answers to this. This guy has 3,000, over 3,000 hits. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, we're not gonna. Freaking A. All right. Let's not use that one. Let's just go ahead and type our own. So what we'll do is we'll say, all right, we'll create a character class. We'll say, okay, we're gonna match on A through Z, 0 through 9, literally a dot, or literally a dash, or a plus or an underscore. Those are some characters that can be in emails, right? And we want one or more of those characters. Then we're going to look for that @ sign. And after it, you're going to have your domain, right? So the domain can have letters, it can have numbers, and I'm only using lowercase. I'm not doing capital A to capital Z because we're going to use the case insensitive modifier on this. All right. So again, with this domain, we can have a dot, a literal dot. That's why I put the backslash in front of it, a literal dash. We can have a plus and a minus. Google has dots separating email addresses, but this is actually for the domain. So the domain can have all these different characters. And that's also a character class. That's why I put it in brackets. And we can have one or more of those. And then we need our dot and really .com, .az, whatever, right? This is the top level domain. After this final dot, like Security Plus Pro dot, that's the literal dot, and then com, that would match here. If we put the plus, so we have one or more of these, right? COM is inside this set, and it's one or more of them, so that would work. All right, so what else do we want? Well, we want to do this match on our response. Not the whole response, just the text. So we should go down here. See, we should have text. Maybe scroll up. Here we go, text, yeah. That just returns the text. If you don't put the dot text, it'll return a bunch of stuff that you don't want. Like everything in the HTML response. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make the regex matching case insensitive with the ATT&CK. All right, so that looks good to me. Let me scroll over. Yep, that looks good. And the first time we run this, we're probably going to see some errors. That's fine. We'll work through them. I want you guys to really see this process. So once we've got the emails that are extracted, what we want to do is add it to this set. We want to update this set with our new emails, right? So I'm going to say emails.update, and let's put in our new emails. All right, so that should do our email capture, okay, guys? So the next step is to do our spidering function. This is where we're going to find all the linked URLs to the website. We need to find links to other pages so we can add those to our crawling queue and truly get all the emails that we possibly can, up to our depth level, right? And we'll really have a pretty robust email scraper here. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. Peace. All right, guys, so now our page is processed. Let's find links to other pages and add them to our crawling queue. So this is where our beautiful soup module will come into play, because this gives us the option to create a soup object, which is just a fancy term for saying an object that includes the representation of the web document in a way that's easy for us to access. So if we say beautiful soup, we're going to pass in the response text, that is the raw HTML source that we got from our request. And we'll save that in a variable called soup. Okay, beautiful soup response text, that looks good. Now we're going to create a loop because we want to find and process all the anchors. The anchors are the links, like the A tags, right? If I go to, like, if you look at this, right? Right click on this and I say inspect. This is a link clearly. But you guys see how up here it has a href equals and then it has a link, right? So this A anchor is called the anchor tag. All these A's have links. So that's what we're looking for in Beautiful Soup. We're going to say soup.findAll. We're going to find all those anchors, right? But we want to make this a loop because we want to keep searching through the entire document for all those links. So we'll say for, and we'll just call it anchor. We can call it link, it doesn't really matter. For anchor in soup.findAll, find all those anchors, then extract the linked URL from the anchor. So we'll say if there's an href, right, in the anchor dot attributes. Then what we'll do is we'll say, all right, anchor dot attributes, specifically the href attribute, save that in a variable called link. Otherwise, the link is just null. It's empty. Okay. Now we also need a way to resolve links that start with a / like that, right? Because we can't actually click or navigate to something like that. We need to turn that into something that's resolvable. So we can say if the link starts with a / right? What we'll do is we'll say, all right, the link then is equal to the base URL plus the link. That way we can actually get there. Else if, which in Python is just called elif, if the link doesn't start with HTTP, I'm just thinking of all the edge cases here, then the link is equal to whatever the path was plus the link. And if the link is not in unscraped URLs and it's not in scraped URLs, then let's add it to unscraped URLs. All right, so the last thing we need to do here is just print out the emails. Okay, so we'll say, let's see here. We have this emails, right, variable. So we can just loop through all the emails for email in emails and just print them out. So we'll save this, Control S. And then the next lecture, we will begin the process of debugging and working through it. Because I'm pretty sure that we might have typoed a few things, we might have a few errors. You can see a few things are red here, right? So I'll see you guys in the next lecture when we run it. And let's go ahead and click the play button and see what we get. All right, so we've got something here. This is line 34. And it says end of line while scanning string literal. Yes, because we forgot the closing parenthesis for the print statement. So let's go ahead and put that in. Rerun it. It's still saying that. Oh, I think it's this. Yeah, that little apostrophe. All right, so let's enter our target URL. Oh, URL split not defined. Let's see line 26. Yep, and you see we have a problem. Pilot found this. View problem. URL split is not defined. Okay, so we probably just need to put the full path to URL split. Let's see what that is. Python URL split. Yeah, so we probably just need to put urllib.parse.url split. urllib.parse. Let's do that. Let's rerun this guy. No connection found. Invalid schema. So we raise that exception. Do we put the URL in right? Yes, it looks like we did. And then we see a problem here with line 36. Let's close this one. So I actually think this is a great opportunity to use the debugger in VS Code. So I'm going to click this little bug play icon over here. What we'll do is we will set a breakpoint. I'm just going to click on the gutter over here, create this red dot, so that when we run and debug, the program will run and break at this line so we can inspect the variables. I want to see if the response variable includes the HTML from the requests library when it sends that GET request, okay? So I'm going to say run and debug, and I want to run and debug on the currently active Python file. All right, so it's running. Let's put that URL in. So it's going to pause when we get to the part of the code where we're getting the error, which is line 36, securitypluspro.com. Okay, so it says scraping H, and then if you look here, so you can see the original URL is set to securitypluspro.com. What we're looking for is the response. Let's see. We may not have actually gotten to that point yet. But already you can see the URL says H. So that's not a valid URL, right? I mean, you can't go to something called H. So what we can do is we can say step over to go to the next line. Step into would take us into a function. So get URL would actually take us into the function, and step out would take us out of our current context into whatever function called us to get to this point. So I know that sounds a little confusing. The main thing we want to focus on here is step over, because we're just going to get to the next line. Okay. So now we're at the accept line. Let's see, that URL still looks jacked up. Let's see. Let's run this a few times. So it's parsing each letter. DQ is a list-like sequence, right? So we need to put this in a list-like form by putting the brackets around it. I think that'll do the trick. Yeah, that's what we want to see. Good. So now you can see it's actually scraping all these subparts. It'll scrape up to 20, but it didn't get any emails. So there could be something wrong with our regex. Oh wait, I still have this breakpoint here. Let's go back to the breakpoints. Okay, I cleared that out. One thing I do want to do before we actually figure out why we're not getting the emails is I want to run this, and I want to open Wireshark. To see if we can observe the traffic. All right, so ETH0, that's right. Click there. And then we will put in our URL. Let's stop it. Let's see, we have some TCP traffic. Let's look at the DNS. So here's Security Plus Pro. So all the DNS here. Let's see if we have any HTTP. Nope. Let's see, let's clear the filters. So let's see, we got all these protocols, and HTTP clearly isn't here. And that's probably because it couldn't connect because the domain, quit without saving, isn't being appropriately resolved. Well, here we see it's resolved. So for some reason it's scraping, but then it's not doing the email extraction. So it could be that there's no emails here. Well, there should be, because this is my website. If my email isn't here, then that's a bigger issue. But there should have been something. Let's go ahead and try something else. So we will run it. I'll just click in its bottom pane. Let's put in like CNN. All right, so we got an email address, although that seems really small. Now, if we want to get more, what we could do is try increasing this count, this depth. So let's set this to 100 and then retry it. Oh, and we did get an issue here. No parser was explicitly, okay. No parser was explicitly specified, so I'm using the best available HTML parser. So we should probably explicitly set this parser value here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this warning, because we don't want warnings showing like this inside of our code. So let's do Control Z to suspend it. Let's go up to when we use beautiful soup. And what we can do here is, if we look at the syntax for this, we can see there's a feature section, and we didn't put the feature, but I believe that is where we need to specify the LXML tag. So I'll say features equals LXML, Control S to save, and then let's rerun this guy. We'll put in CNN and see if we get more emails. So we'll come back when this is done. Remember, it's now going to 100. That's our depth. Right here. All right, so I'll see you guys in a little bit. All right, so about, I don't know, 5 minutes later, you can see we've got our emails. And as you can tell, depth matters, but this is pretty cool, right? We've got a bunch of them. I've obfuscated them for the privacy of these web applications. So there you go. We've got our emails and we're good to go, guys. So I hope you guys enjoy this. If you have any questions, hit me up. Make sure, if you learned something new in this section, definitely leave a favorable review. Don't forget to hit those 5 stars before you go. And let's keep it going. All right, guys. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.